Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first fall meeting. Before we begin, on behalf of the GBIT executives, I'd like to acknowledge that where this meeting is being hosted today in Vancouver, BC, is that we are on unceded traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations people. We do have some updates from the GBIT executive. Nominations for the 2022 GBIT Awards and the 2023 treasurer position will open sometime in October. We do have an upcoming meeting in late October presented by Watt Consulting on curbside management. Stay tuned for that date coming up. And lastly, we are planning on having our AGM in person in December. So we'll have a date for that as well. So I see 50 people are coming in, so we'll keep going for the next 30 to come in. But so for today's presentation, we do have the highest number of registrants for both in-person and virtual meetings. I'm sure you guys are all excited, and that last year, as you all may know, that the catastrophic events of last fall, specifically the BC floods across the province, impacted us all here in BC. Today we're fortunate enough to have Jonathan Ho present on the BC flood recovery and the Highway 5 reopening project. Due to the floods, Highway 1, Highway 3, the Coquihalla, and Highway 99, along with several other BC highways, were closed, which temporarily cut off land access between the Lower Mainland from the rest of Canada. This supply chain were disrupted, and many communities had limited access or no access at all. With MOTI and the all-star team of professional engineers and construction crew working tirelessly around the clock, Highway 5 was reopened to essential and commercial traffic just a month after the floods on December 21st, 2021. So Jonathan needs no introduction, as he's been a transportation engineer with over 15 years of experience, and currently he's working with Lillooet as their MOTI design lead, where his projects include the Trans Mountain Expansion Project and the Highway 5 Repair Project. His past projects in traffic management include the Broadway Subway Extension, Fortis BC LMIPSU project, and the Canada Line. So throughout this presentation, feel free to enter your questions in the text tab on the top right-hand corner of your screen. I'll be monitoring them and we'll go through them at the end. And also, please keep your microphones on mute. So without further ado, Jonathan Ho.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, just wanted to say a big thank you for all of your interest in this presentation. Like Zhao has said, I think the project and last year's event has touched us all. I do have quite a lot of slides to go through today, so I'm on my second cup of coffee, so I'll try to flow through them very quickly and make sure that I leave enough time for question and answers afterwards. So is everyone hearing me okay? Just go for one more check before I go.
I can hear you fine.
All right, so we'll begin. So just a little bit of a quick introduction. So kind of who we are. So we're one of the North America's largest engineering and construction organization. So our home base was started in 1884 in Omaha, Nebraska. And here is just a little bit of a quick overview in terms of the markets that we serve. But more importantly, a lot of the question may be, how did we do it so quickly last year? So we are a little bit more than just a construction company. My group, the group that I belong to, it's called KIE. So it's internally it's known as Lillooet Infrastructure Engineering. So consider that as almost like an internal consulting firm within Lillooet itself. We have our main offices in Denver, Laval, Burnaby, and now in Mexico. And a lot of the engineering services that we offer from this office and from our other offices include structural, geotechnical, civil, and in the civil side, it covers transportation, utility, drainage, and hydrotechnical. So it is with this type of caliber, this horsepower, that we were able to get the work done last year. We actually had people flying in from Laval, from Denver. Everyone contributed So this goes beyond just the road builders and the engineering community in BC. We were able to get a lot of help. So hopefully today we'll be able to kind of go through a little bit of a quick story about just how we got how we got Highway 5 open. So preface, a little bit of a kind of storytelling. So how we were out there is basically Hewitt is working on the Trans Mountain Spread 5B project. We are teamed up with another couple of firms, so we call ourselves Team 5B. We were just kind of working out there, like many of you on this call who are probably working on the Trans Mountain project as well. Our spread runs from Coquihalla to the whole region, and Coquihalla is just right about the Sokios rest area, all the way south to kind of close to Popcom in Chilliwack. So basically, we're working along, producing our traffic control plan drawings, similar to something that you see here, our typical access point on Highway 5. That was our kind of our main job out there on Highway 5, kind of before November 13 and 14. And then basically that weekend, November 13th, everything changed. So on November 12th, after we have already kind of had a pretty rough year, I would say, from a weather event perspective, we had probably one of the hottest summer we have ever experienced with the heat dome. We had a lot of wildfires, and when fall comes, it was a pretty wet one. So we're pretty getting used to it. And then we started hearing about all these new terms, atmospheric river. No one really kind of know what it is. As far as I know, I only know of the Pineapple Express. So let's see what this brings us. So with the weather forecast, we thought about, we're pretty used to the rain in Vancouver, so it could be just another typical day. And then next day, over the weekend, we started waking up to hearing all these news about the massive flooding that we have, within pretty much throughout all the south coast of BC. Abbotsford, as you can see on the right side of the screen, completely underwater. Highway 1 was basically inoperable. You hear a lot of the mudslide and around Highway 7 in Agassiz, and of course, our project, Highway 5. So I think most of you probably have seen these photos that were kind of covered quite extensively from the media. Immediately on Twitter, the morning that we woke up, we see that basically this location, I believe this is a Carolyn mine, was completely gone. So there's the Highway 5 is no more. It's no longer really accessible. And then, as you can see in the title, not just Highway 5, we got also Malahat Highway on the Vancouver Island were also impacted. So Highway 5 probably just needs no further introduction. It is one of the probably most important truck route in BC, linking between Kamloops and the Lower Mainland. The amount of truck traffic on there, for all of you who have driven on it, it's pretty insane. In the summertime, you get other RV vehicles and things like that as well. But in a year already kind of devastated by supply chain issues with COVID-19 and things like that, having the linkage of Highway 5 lost was a big blow for our province. And I don't know how. Okay, give me 1 second. Small technical difficulty. Not sure how it got all the way to the end. Okay, almost there. Okay, very sorry about that. So as mentioned, Highway 1, a couple of shots in terms of the damage that we saw on the news channel. So we got Tank Hill on the left side, where you can see, the road was just completely gone. On the right side of the screen, that's Malahat. Highway 7, New Agassiz, massive washout over there as well. So what that led us to was basically our land access between BC South Coast and for the rest of the Canada was literally completely cut off. What you also saw, Highway 99 was also damaged as well. it led to, what probably, hopefully something that will only go through once in a lifetime, the gas rationing. And, we notice a lot of people stocking up at the grocery store, worry about not having enough food and regular day-to-day supply at home, just due to the fact that we'll no longer be able to get goods from the interior and from other parts of Canada. As most of us have kind of observed, Highway 3 is definitely not the ideal truck route. Truck definitely can travel on them, but definitely not being able to take the level of volume that Highway 5 used to carry. So therefore, it is paramount that we work together as a community to try to open up Highway 5 as soon as possible. So this is kind of where the story starts. I call it the Highway 5 story. The first thing that we have to do is let's go out and take a look in terms of what the damages are. What we see on the screen, on the TV screen, it's just a small snippet. You almost need to go out there and kind of see it for yourself to kind of have a good appreciation in terms of just how Mother Nature, what it brought to us. So we were, a couple of slides, I call it the force of nature. So November 13th, if most of you recall, it wasn't just the one event that we had. We were out there immediately afterwards, starting to help out with some of the early repair work, putting out ripraps and things like that. But a lot of our effort was basically lost when the second Amazon River came on November 20th, if I got the dates correct. We were out there again trying to fix up some of the things. And one more time, the third time, November 29th. And I think that was one of probably the most devastating blow to Highway 5 out there. Luckily enough, I think after that, things started to clear up a little bit, and that's when we can really kind of get to work. So a quick assessment on Highway 5 found basically over 20 damaged locations along. It ranges from kind of abutments being washed away to roadway being washed out. What you see here, I believe that's Jessica Bridge. And basically, the water starts carving itself into many ways, and our abutment was completely washed away on this side. So the water basically ended up where it's not really supposed to be. So here's a quick overview map in terms of some of the key locations that we found were, has the most extensive damages, and shapes basically what we ended up doing over the month of December in 2021. So starting from south to north, Jessica Bridge, and then next up we have Caroline Mine Bridge. Automite was assessed, but later on I think it was deemed not to be an extensive project so I think just patch repairs, if I recall correctly. And then further up north is still kind of what you see today, the bridges that is just kind of standing out there on its own with no linkage, Juliet and Bottle Top. So here's just a little bit of a quick overview in terms of what the damages were at these locations. So this presentation focused on basically 3 bridges that we worked extensively on last year. Jessica Bridge, here's a shot of it before. And that's kind of what it looks like immediately after. I think this one was taken after the first event. Here's an aerial shot of it. Next up, we have Kellen Bridge. This is a shot before, and the shot after basically what was covered by the news media. And then further up, here's the shot of Juliet Bridge. And here's devastation after. Last but not least, we also have Bottle Top. And Bottle Top, as you can see, it's just devastating in terms of what the force of nature has. Like this riverway wasn't really not supposed to be there. It's able to carve out the entire chunk of the highway. And basically, this is something that we realized it's, a lot of the river training kind of over the time probably just wasn't able to kind of withstand the amount of rainstorm that we encountered last year. And as you will notice in quite a lot of the photos coming up, This also happened kind of in the midst of winter up in this area. So a lot of the challenges that we face includes the climate they have to work in as well. So here's just one of the shots taken a little bit after, immediately after the rain event. A few days later, we will be getting a big dump of snow up there. So to do the damage assessment, we have to do a very good job of data gathering. So with the Highway 5 being inoperable, we have to come up with different ways to do it. And one of the most effective way to conduct the data gathering is having in-person visits using helicopter. It allows us to kind of see the damages of the Highway 5 up in the air, but at the same time, it's also able to kind of land our field team in places that vehicles cannot get us to. Another item that we used quite extensively last year to help assess the damages, and I believe the ministry and a lot of the other firms who have been involved with the flood recovery is also using drone. It has been a pretty cool equipment for recreational user, but for construction, it's actually a very important piece of equipment these days. It's able to get you to do a site visit with being on safe grounds, so you can kind of go up. At the same time, you can kind of also go down underneath the bridges to assess the embankment and things like that, the integrity of it. So the usage of drone was actually quite instrumental on this project. And this happened to be pretty common sight. So I think this is December 6th, if I'm not mistaken. So after the third atmospheric river event, we're able to kind of get some calm skies, as you can see out here, so we can kind of do a more comprehensive site visit and assess the damage in a little bit more detail. A lot of the repair work is already underway by this point, but we need to start figuring out in terms of what exactly are we going to do to try to open up the highway. So when the land highway is closed, basically what you end up with, and this is just at the top of around Bottle Top, you basically have a highway in the air. I think it basically become an impromptu kind of helicopter landing pads, and the amount of helicopters just going in and out of there was tremendous. And this is it was also my first time getting a ride on the chopper, so we got to ride on a pretty cool red one with a little bit of a bubble screen. So after assessing all the damages, it's time to get to work. So the importance of Kiewit on this project was we just happened to be at the right place at the right time. The amount of equipment and the amount of manpower required to start the repair work requires a lot of resources. And we just happened to be kind of right next to the project, building our Spread 5B, which basically was put on hold by that point. So we were immediately tapped on the shoulder by a lot of our partners in the area and say, are you guys ready to help out? Of course we are. We roll out our sleeves, move our equipment, and we're able to kind of mobilize very quickly. So the two groups that we work mainly with out there, it's M.O. Anderson, who is the highway maintenance contractor south of Portia, and also YRB. They look after the Highway 5 north of Portia. So these are the two groups that we work very closely with, and essentially kind of what breaks up the project. So Jessica and Carolyn Mine are within the M.O. Anderson side, and Juliet and Bottle Top were with the YRB side. So the first thing that we got to do was removing a lot of the damaged bridge sections out there. And as we were doing that, we were able to kind of look at the damages a little bit more closely, ensuring that the superstructure were not damaged. Most of the impacts that we noticed were really just on the, luckily on the abutment side. So with the pier, with the pier for the bridges, they tend to be in decent shape. So we're able to start looking at what are some of the more effective and efficient solutions to start restoring highway traffic. While we're taking down all the damaged infrastructure, at the same time, it's equally important to protect existing infrastructure as well, to make sure that we don't lose any more bridges. It was essentially what we talked about when we landed our helicopter. Let's go out there, take a look. Let's make sure that Highway 5 isn't compromised anymore. So this is a location around Pierce Creek, so pretty close to Hope. As you can see where the existing road is coming in, this access road was completely washed out this is where the river should be, and this is where the river has ended up. So we had heavy equipment out there immediately trying to basically divert the water in terms of going back to where it really should be. And just a really quick note, so what happens is a story about this little one lone excavator. We landed our chopper and we realized that the water should be kind of over on that side where the access bridge is, but it's basically kind of overwhelmed on this side. So just to the left side of the screen, we need to try to, build an impromptu dam to basically stop the water from coming around here anymore, because this is a flow path that would have the biggest damage to the potential damage to the bridge abutment that you see up on the top of the screen. So we landed around kind of 9 o'clock in the morning, and this lone excavator was just trying to find this path to cross the river. So what it does, it's use this little bucket to try and see, how deep the water is. It will move one step at a time. A couple of times we see that it has to back up and try a different route. So eventually it made it through. It was driving along the access road for a little bit more, and essentially the equipment operator was out there all by himself. And I think throughout the entire day, he was able to work tirelessly. And I think by the time we left the site around 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he literally all by himself was able to kind of get a little bit of a small dam kind of, blocking the water. So it's amazing some of the dedication of what people out there were doing at the time. And then here we started talking about the reopening plan. So as a transportation engineer, so one of the things we need to start establishing is, what is the realistic opening day? By that point, you can see that a lot of the news since the first impact already, as you can see on November 25th, just the devastation out there. The original thought was we'll probably be opening traffic by, in 2022 in January. It started off being an estimate of end of January. So we need to ask ourselves the question at that time was, what is the realistic opening day? What is the realistic opening configuration? Would it be a 2-lane highway, 4-lane highway? Where the damages are? Do we need crossovers? What are the detours needed? Where locations are washed out? Do we need lane closures? And once we have an idea of all those things, the most important questions becomes, where do we start throwing our resources to start repairing the highway? What are some of the more critical components, and what are some of the components that we can come back to afterwards? So here's a really quick schematic of the reopening plan. So all the red that you see along this corridor, which starts from Hope at the bottom, kind of goes up, sneaks around Jessica and Carolyn Mine, and then sneaks around up to Box Canyon. And this is at the top where Juliet and Bottle Top is. So what we identified are some of the key sections that we need to start getting to work right away. It was essentially a race against time. So there was the Othello section, AKA there was also Pierce Creek in this area. There's Jessica Bridge and Juliet Bridge, as well as Bottle Top Bridge. Othello washout was pretty extensive. I don't know if I have a photo in this slide, but essentially that section, even to this day, it is still closed. The latest intel I heard, I think they have already awarded it, and it should be kind of, they should be opening in due time. And hopefully that's when we can kind of, get more of the 4 lanes back on Highway 5. This schematic allows us to kind of visualize in terms of where are the different crossover needs to be, so that we can kind of start doing a little bit of a field intel to see what are the suitable location. Because one thing that we didn't have at that time was time. So we have to basically find locations that we can implement these detours very quickly. So what we try to minimize is, we try to find a flat spot where you already have an existing relatively flat median that we can really quickly put in a median crossover. We have locations that we may be able to skinny up the lanes a little bit if possible to try to get more lanes through. And that was the idea of the schematic, is really just kind of demonstrate what we need to do to get to work. And at the same time, one of my main role was to develop a traffic management plan in anticipation of the opening. So while the construction is underway, while we're trying to figure out, what kind of detours or crossovers are needed, we need the plan to start setting up the framework. When Highway 5 does open, how is it going to operate? and how can we make sure that it operates as effectively and as reliably as possible, because by that point, there's a lot less resilience in our highway network. So any major closures and things like that to the reopened Highway 5 would still be kind of, devastating to our supply chain. So we started drilling into a little bit more of the details now as part of this traffic management plan. As to design for the detours, we need to come up with what is a reliable design speed for them. We need to start figuring out who are the users of the highway, who will be responsible for the maintenance, what are some of the criteria for incident response. So for those of you working, who work on the TMP quite often, this is essentially the framework that tends to be set up within the traffic management manual. So that's essentially the Bible that we are sticking with. And we're looking for early wins. It's, again, going back to what can we do as quickly as possible to get our temporary detours in place, and then to also get the supporting signings out there. A couple of more special considerations, again, given the amount of users on this highway being trucks. So we need to make sure that potentially with 2-lane segments, if there's a 1 vehicle breakdown, it would probably be prudent to assume that we need to get that vehicle out of the way much more quickly and much more rapidly than before. The plan needs to stay very agile. So we need to look at what are some of the more robust incident response procedures needed, and also at the same time, whether there's need for increased enforcement, whether that is on speed, but at the same time on heavy truck traffic as well for hauling. So essentially what we have established is by that point, we, as someone with experience preparing TMP, a lot of these will have to be a judgment call. So understanding the amount of damages on the highway, what is the likelihood that Highway 5 will continue to be posted at 120K. So we made a conscious decision at the point is maybe we should target more of 100K posted speed in areas that are not damaged by the flood. And at the locations where we are going to put in our detours, the idea is we will try to go with a more of a 50K design speed. Just again, we were not able to build a lot of very luxurious crossover design with the challenges that we have out there. So therefore we settled on, we believe 50K is a reasonable speed for the detours out there. And the detours ended up being at Othello Road, Juliet, and Bottle Top. So these are some of the detours that you still see out there if you happen to have drive through Highway 5 recently. Other considerations are, particularly for Juliet and Bottle Top, I think by that point we realized that it's just not reasonable to try to get it open to the 4-lane state. But at the same time, what you see here is Jessica. And Jessica, we started getting a little bit of a really good traction, a lot of good momentum out there. So we're able to kind of see, as you can see on this photo, that we get some temporary MSE walls in, and we're able to get some temporary approach slabs. So Jessica, we are very lucky that we determined early on that there's a very high likelihood that we can get it open to 4 lanes. In areas that we only have 2-lane, we also have to start thinking about how can we make sure that it operates safely and reliably. So we thought about what are some of the potential for physical separation, like concrete barrier that you see out there on Othello Road. What are some of the use for delineation to separate the 2-way traffic, use of rumble strips. So a lot of these has to take into consideration of the climate in this area. So that's why we ended up with barrier separation further down near Hope, because the elevation is a lot lower, so it's less susceptible to snow and the winter weather. Whereas higher up at Bottle Top, we spoke with the maintenance contractor, and there's just no way that their plows can operate effectively with the median barrier. So therefore, we decided to go with stick with more of a conservative 50K out there to start, and that still allows a very robust winter maintenance procedures out there.
Sorry, John. Sorry, John, we're hitting the 20 mark.
Perfect. Thank you. So bang on at the slide 37. So therefore, we're able to reduce our scope quite substantially to focus on just these 2 main areas. So that's I would consider that at that point a pretty big win already. So we're able to refine our traffic management plan start putting more details on the design to feed it into the construction crew out there so they can get the detour design. I forgot which day it was. I believe this is just 2 weeks after the last atmospheric event. So this is probably December 12th or the 14th. And this is really the first day that you can actually drive from Hope all the way up to Bottle Top. So all the land access were restored in a very temporary manner. And we had our first meeting on site with the ministry, not being able to, not necessarily have to fly in by helicopter. And at this meeting, we're able to fine tune some of the targets and the details to make sure that we can open up this highway safely. And then the new target came up. Now that you saw that we were able to kind of drive up there, we're able to accelerate the schedule of the reopening. So rather than end of January, it got moved to early January. And the target opening day now became December 20th. And the conscious decision was made that we will open up to commercial and essential traffic only so that we can kind of test the water, see how it operates. And if it works well, try to open up to a little bit more. And as a result of everyone's hard work, this is really the feel-good story afterwards. It's the fact that we're able to get the job done. So on December 20th, myself, Victor, who is also in this room, and our director, we drove up to site and we actually parked at Jessica to watch the first southbound truck to make it through from Bottle Top down to this area. And the moment that trucks went through, horns blaring and things like that, it's a really good pat on the back to make sure that, not just ourselves, the road builders, the ministry, everyone else who has contributed had done an incredible job to get Highway 5 reopened. And as a result of that, here's some photo shots, aerial shots from courtesy of Victor. So this is what you see. It's a 4-lane down to the 2-lane segment up at Juliet to Bottle Top. You can see that some of the bridges are still kind of stranded there, and we have 2-way traffic basically running on the remaining bridge. Here's the shot at Bottle Top, and just in time for the winter weather. So I know we try not to do it, but a lot of the paving work was definitely done kind of when the weather was not ideal. And this is where we are sitting in the median at Jessica, trying to witness the 4 lanes being open at that location. As a result of that, I believe the ministry monitored the traffic performance very closely, and overall there were no major concerns. So on January 19th, a news report came up basically saying that Highway 5 has then reopened to all traffic. And some of the lessons learned. So always plan for the worst and hope for the best, and that was kind of like my motto. So planning for the worst, aka we did a lot of the TCP drawings and a lot of the detours that ended up not being needed, and in a way is a good thing. Doing more is better than doing less, because if it's really needed, we will have to scramble. So we're kind of happy that we're able to kind of get a lot of the detours, the TCP done for all the locations that we thought we may need it, and at the end of the day only needed for about 3 to 4 locations. Establish and maintain effective communication was very important. This is through people with in the field, and then also with our executive, and then also with the ministry, with the highway maintenance contractor, to make sure that we are fully aware in terms of what everyone is doing, where to mobilize our resources accordingly, and coming up with good direct lines to who the decision makers are. Data collection, we spoke about the importance of taking advantage of the drone observations from field personnel from a daily meeting. That was very important. And then one unsung hero is definitely Steve Rose here. I guess he lives out at the Sawaka Creek area, and he was posting basically daily video. So a lot of us would kind of watch his video every night before we go to sleep when he uploads them, to kind of also get a good view in terms of what's going on out there. So he's definitely one of the very important individual, and it's something that it's unorthodox, but came in really handy for our work. Other lessons learned includes, despite the speed of the work that we did, we also maintained a high quality in the assigned deliverables. We still go through our regular checkpoints. We have our quality manager actually auditing all the designs, despite we had to expedite and prepare them at lightning speed. we have to maintain a fair agility in our design to suit field conditions. So for example, between Juliet and Molotov, we probably moved that detour maybe 2 or 3 times, trying to figure out what is the best spot to put it. We have to work with the Highway 5 traffic coordination plan to make sure that the ministry and the coordination with the area managers to see what's going on out there. And basically, the biggest lesson learned from this whole disaster recovery is, how we should move forward and incorporate climate change resiliency in our future design with the model of how do we build back better. And with that said, again, the appreciation goes out to everyone who has contributed, not just to Highway 5, but to Highway 1, Highway 3, Highway 99, Highway 8. Our community came together. The road builders came together, and there's no me, you, everyone is like, we have to get this thing done. So I just wanted to say, thank you to everyone who has contributed. And this is a great shot from Victor while we're on a helicopter flying back. So just a little bit of a in photography they call this Jesus light shining through the clouds. So there's always hope. And here we are. Questions?
Perfect. Thanks so much, John. And thank you to your team and everyone on this call who's been involved in this project. For any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat. And I'll go through them right now. So Gary asked, great presentation. One question though, with all the water and water course changes, was there any assessment done further up the mountain to assess where water may go in the future?
I think absolutely. I think even that still is ongoing today to have a good understanding of the hydrotechnical model in the area. For those who you may not know, Hewitt is now on the Alliance team doing the Highway 5 repair, and that became a pretty important scope to understand how do we make it more resilient in the future, and understanding the upstream, downstream conditions are a big part of it. In addition to that, ministry also has their own assessment and modeling ongoing at this point.
And to follow up, is Hewitt involved with Highway 8?
At this point, I don't think we are.
Any other questions? Looks like, oh, Eric, thanks for asking. Great presentation, thanks John, and to the GYT for organizing this. Were temporary bridges used as part of the reconstruction?
For the reopening of Highway 5, I don't think there are any temporary bridges, but I believe, Victor, correct me if I'm wrong, the term is that we do have temporary spans, approach spans, approach slabs, to basically hook up to the existing bridge. And you saw that at Jessica. That was something that we're able to identify early, get it prefabricated, brought it up there, and we're able to install it in, I think, a day or two. So that was done very, very quickly, and that is, I would say, probably one of the few temporary structure that we had. And at Molotov and Juliet, I guess the decision was that they would have to come back and do something much more significant. So that's why we ended up with just the 2-lane segments up there.
And Carrie asked, in retrospect, if there was only one thing you could do differently, what would that be?
Starting earlier, even though we're mobilized very quickly and things like that. Maybe the traffic planning, the detour planning, maybe after the first event, we could probably start a little bit sooner. Because the detour and things like that, we're just so taken aback with one storm after another. We're scrambling literally on a daily basis just to go out there and protect the infrastructure out there. At that point, it doesn't really come to everyone's mind that we need to start thinking about the reopening. It's more about let's go into full protection mode. So it isn't really until December that we start looking at, how do we open it with the detours and things like that. So from that point on, call it December 1st to the actual opening of the 20th, we had 20 days to do the design of all detours and then actually get them built and have it reopened. So again, if we, in retrospect, if possible, maybe we could start looking at the detour planning a little bit sooner from my perspective as an MOT design lead. But at that point, it just wasn't possible.
Thanks. Denny asks, excellent work, John and team. Were there any tow trucks used on standby when Highway 5 was reopened?
Tow trucks on standby. I believe that was part of the kind of the incident response plan. We did talk about beefing it up a little bit more. And it's not just your regular tow truck. We did try to identify whether there is opportunity to bring some the heavy tow truck out there, because a lot of times what you notice out there in terms of vehicle breakdown is not your regular vehicle. A lot of them are trucks. So by that point, if you need to bring the heavy tow trucks up there, it may be too late or the response time could be too long. So that was one thing that we identified and trying to get that set up out there in the field.
Getting lots of congratulations in both the organizers and everyone comments.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, if that's that, we'll end it here. This presentation is recorded, so there will be a link, but it won't be posted publicly. If you would like the link, feel free to reach out to me at GVITE. One last question, John. We'll answer this since we do have time. Devisha asked, what sort of enforcement strategies were used during the process?
Enforcement strategies were, I think, too prone. Since we have a little bit of time, so the decision was to open up Highway 5 to commercial and essential traffic only. Commercial traffic is relatively easy to label, but what's essential? That was a big question mark, and a lot of people try to cheat their way up onto Highway 5 during that period. So for those of you who may have been out there last year, so basically they had a checkpoint set up around Highway 3, Highway 5 splits near Hope. So they have police and CBSC out there basically checking to make sure that everyone who is using Highway 5 are indeed within the allowed group. They were sending a lot of people actually onto Highway 3. Some people were coming out saying that they are doing a site visit, but they're not with any construction company. What I heard from the field team was a lot of YouTubers trying to come up and take drone shots and things like that when it opened. So a lot of those people had to be turned away. And in the southbound direction, same thing. I believe at Merritt, there was a couple of checkpoints set up as well. So that's one thing. It's to enforcement for the user of Highway 5 during that interim period. Other enforcements were CBSC, making sure that trucks are operating in good condition on the highway. Again, going back to, we need to make sure that it's as reliable as we can make it. And then at the same time, other enforcements along the corridor include speed, because what you notice are probably the most substantial damage area, but surprisingly, Highway 5 actually held up really well in probably a good 80% of in other areas. So for a lot of people, they may still are encouraged to drive the way that they were. So there were a lot of enforcements needed to make sure that we're keeping the speed low, so that again, going back to reliability, it's making sure that people can travel along the corridor safely.
Great. All right, I think that's that. So thank you again. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like the YouTube link for this presentation. Otherwise, have a great day, everyone, and look forward to our October newsletter. Thanks, everyone.